workshop.
Yes, sir. At this time, I'd like to bring forward our workshop on choice and career options. If at this time we have Dr. Glenda Sheffield, Mr. Jay Bogus, and Dr. Geraldine Johnson come forward and give us our update to the board on career and choice and career, excuse me.
Well, good afternoon, Board Chair Mr. Barbieri and board members and Dr. Fenoy. Today's workshop is to provide a yearly update regarding our choice programs. And most importantly, I have to tell you, while working on today's presentation with the team, I had to personally remind myself that educating our students definitely looked different than what it did this time last year, and I'm sure that everyone in this room can agree to this. But a positive for me in this current space is that we have been challenged to think differently and become creative and flexible when appropriate. An example of this conversation for today's purpose would be that each year we look forward to welcoming about 15,000 participants to the South Florida Fairgrounds, showcasing our schools, our choice programs, and in navigating in this COVID-19 space, a priority for the department had to be for us to rethink what a virtual experience will look like. Because at the end of the day, our top priority is about educating our students and providing the services and resources for our family. And I'm just so proud of this team because we surely brought that virtual experience, that this COVID experience made us think outside of the box, to life back on October the 20th as we kicked off our virtual showcase of schools. Thanks to Claudia Communications and the entire team. And this virtual experience is continuing as our families are, they're continuously reviewing all of our choice programs and doing it virtually. They're not just looking at the schools that are housing our choice programs, but they have the opportunity to look at all district-operated schools. And as we go through today's workshop, I just want to remind everyone that many of our priorities have changed since March 13th. To say the least, we find that many of our goals and desires remained unchanged as our immediate focus shifted to providing opportunities for our students to continue their experience in a distance learning environment. To name a few, when we left on March 13th, it was important as a team that we work with our school-based leaders on spring industry certification completions in an at-home environment. Whoever thought that we would have to shift from teaching our students from the schoolhouse to their homes. And this was necessary to us from the Career and Choice Department because we provided our students that opportunity to where they would have an opportunity to receive the credentials to earn their marketable skills. And in addition, it became evident that thousands of our students that were participating in our medical academies were not be able to complete their clinical rotations, and distance learning, an option needed to be provided for them. It also became evident to us that we needed to secure funding for computers for our CTE programs to run more effectively and efficiently for our students and teachers. Due to the consumer demands, unfortunately, these devices would not be available until February. But at this time, and I know that was just a quick overview, but boy, time has changed. COVID definitely has pushed us to think outside of the box. And as one indicated earlier, distance learning is going to be around. Educating our students will definitely look different. It will never look the same. So we're committed to creating a distance learning structure that we could utilize here in Palm Beach County to where we can continue to provide opportunities and choice for our families and their students. So at this time, I'm going to just turn it over to Dr. Johnson, our Director for Choice and Career Innovation, and Mr. J. Bogus, our Assistant Superintendent.
Thank you, Dr. Sheffield. As we move through to today's PowerPoint and workshop, a few points of topic, a little bit about who Choice and Career Options is, monitoring success, anything from recruitment and support, what are our driving forces in both choice and career and technical education, and then moving into IB as far as priorities and other choice programs, and lastly, really our priorities moving forward as a district and casting vision around that. When we look at choice and career options, it is a small and mighty team, very similar to their director, Dr. Geraldine Johnson, small and mighty, but it really is something that I can tell you, speaking from past experience and even now current leadership experience, around our mission and vision. It is to empower and inspire success for our stakeholders, very simply stated. But it is also about redefining success, that it is not just about college or university, it's all-encompassing to college, university, trade school, the military, apprenticeship. And that's really what we start to talk about in both mission, but also about vision. It's a new generation of learners and leaders, that this inspiration pre, mid, and post-COVID continues to be at the forefront of who we are as a department and a division, but also what I think we're casting vision from Dr. Fenoy and the school board's perspective. When we look at long-term outcomes, I can tell you choice and career options is from start to finish, from third grade reading engagement all the way to fostering postgraduate success. When we look at choice in Palm Beach County, there's a variety of different definitions from a federal, state, and local level. But really it comes down to the choice. It's not just the choice application process. And many think that might be, that's just what this department does. It's career and technical education. It's reassignments. It's controlled open enrollment. It's opportunity scholarship, Hope Scholarship, and recently in the last 2 years, family empowerment scholarships. This small but mighty team takes care of all of that work for this school district. Dr. Johnson?
So over the past couple of years, we have continued to increase in the number of choice and career options. As you can see here, we've had a steadily growth pattern of programs here in Palm Beach County. Starting with FY22, we welcome some new programs to Palm Beach County. Glade Central High School will be welcoming a new computer science as well as an agri-technology choice program. Santa Lucia's High School will be welcoming a new cybersecurity program. Plamosa School of the Arts will be welcoming their first 6th grade class for the arts. Addison Meisner will be welcoming its first 6th grade class with a new business leadership academy that will be focusing on entrepreneurship. And Verde K-8 will be focusing on a new Cambridge lower secondary program, and they will be bringing on their 7th grade class in FY22. We do have a couple programs that decided to convert either from choice to in-house, which is in the case of LC Swain for their pre-law, pre-medical, and pre-IT academies. And what we've seen is what we all know about the beauty of our programs. What has happened over the past couple of years, the dual language program that is now at LC Swain has started to make the students that were leaving and applying to go to other schools such as Okahili, when we put in the dual language program, those students started to stay home. And so as a result, the number of in-boundary students increased the capacity of the school, and so the principal wanted to decrease the number of out-of-boundary students that were coming into these 3 programs to allow for the handful of seats that they were getting for these programs because of the capacity of their zone students, to allow for those extra seats to be allocated towards the dual language program. Seminole Ridge High School is going to now accept some out-of-boundary students for their ROTC program. And we have a name change at Roosevelt Leadership Academy at Roosevelt Middle School.
As part of these oncoming K-8 programs, we have to make mention to our Penny at Work. These are brand new school sites and the expansion from K through 5 to now 6 through 8, and further defining what a K-8 is. It is a K through 5 school with a 6 through 8 choice option attached.
Can I ask a question? I'd like to see Boca Elementary School up there. It's a K-1, it's a Title I school with some of the most impoverished kids in the district. Go to that school. They need a medical academy. I've been asking for it for a long time. The FAU Medical School is willing to work at that school, send people over. The only thing they won't fund is a teacher. If we can put a medical academy teacher there, they can flow from Boca Elementary to Boca Middle to Boca High School, all have medical programs, as well as West Boca Medical School. We need to get something in there for those impoverished kids in Boca Elementary School. And the medical academy is the best option we have at this point because of the feeder school pattern. So can you guys take a look at that and see once and for all whether we can make it happen if we're going to be expanding? Let's take a look at Boca Elementary, see what we can do for those kids.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
One of the things that we do every year is we take a look at the number of students that are applying to our programs. And we like to say that there is a correlation between the number of applicants and student interest. So as you can see across the district and all levels, these are the top 5 programs that tend to get the most applications. They happen to be in the arts, medical, international baccalaureate, IT, and engineering. Our student interest also, I want to point out, is in line with the targeted industry needs of our local economy. So when you look at those targeted industries from the BDB, Career Source Florida, they happen to be in healthcare, they happen to be in engineering and also information technology. So it's really nice to see that the students that are applying, that those top 5 or within the top 5 programs, they match or align with the targeted needs of our local economy. And so the next couple slides I'm going to go through relatively quickly. This just breaks down that previous slide by grade level. So you can see here by elementary school what the top 5 programs based on the number of applicants. The next one shows the middle schools. And this one shows the high schools. We also take a look every year at the students who are applying first choice. So we like to say our students, when you pick something as a first choice, it's something that you really, really, really want. And we do take a look at the number of students that are assigned as well. So as you can see for our FY21 applicants, we had a total of 20,131 students to apply. And of that 20,000, 13,143 students were assigned to a choice program. That is students who met eligibility criteria, so that's about a 65% assignment rate. We take a look at these numbers from a demographic standpoint. We also take a look at these numbers from a special population standpoint as well. So one of the things that we do when we take a look at the data every year, we sit down and we make some decisions and we try to come up with some ways to improve each year. So definitely we need to take a look at how do we increase the number of ELL and ESC students applying first and foremost and eventually being assigned. One of those things that we do, we focus on recruitment efforts. We focus on getting out into the community, not so much in person now, but we are virtually. And we look at how we can assist our parents and families pre-lottery, during the lottery process, as well as post-lottery so that they have a smooth transition. We're using social media. We're on Facebook Live events, emails, creating videos in different languages, having virtual open houses, sending messages. We just learned we're going to try to send some messages through the SIS gateway so that parents and students will know, hey, apply for a choice program. It's available to all students.
Dr. Johnson, I'd like to ask another question.
Yes, sir.
So you showed about 65% of the kids that applied got in. The other 35%, why are we looking for more kids when we have 35% of the kids couldn't get into a choice program that they applied for? Did those kids not meet the eligibility requirements? Or are they just, there wasn't room for them?
It could be a little of both. It could be that they may not have met the eligibility criteria, or there were not enough seats.
So can you let the board know how many of the kids that didn't get in, just met the eligibility requirements, but did not have any place where we could put them because we didn't have enough room?
Okay.
And how many of them, break them down by the ELL students and such, so we know how many kids actually applied that couldn't get in? So the board can kind of direct where we want you to increase the programs so that we can make sure that those kids that want to get in have an opportunity to get in before we go looking for more children to put in the mix.
Okay.
Mr. Barbieri?
Ms. Brill?
Thank you, and I just want to add to that, if you would let us know which schools, I think I saw something in there, don't have any programs that people outside of boundaries can attend, and where, I know, for example, in my area, because I only have one high school, the students do apply at other high schools, but they're not getting in. And we're losing a lot of students that are going to a charter school because they can't get into their choice programs. I'm able to work with the families on some suggestions. Now, we do have South Tech, which is opened. And I know we're going to have a lot of students shifting over to South Tech because there are no career options out in the western area. So just want you to give us a little bit of an update on that as well.
Sure.
And perfect example is Park Vista. There's no opportunity for any student outside of the boundaries to go into Park Vista unless they do automotive.
Right. And that is, Park Vista is a prime example, and a lot of that has to do with the capacity of the schools and their ability to bring in these out-of-boundary students, but we will put that information together.
Mrs. Anders?
Thank you, and I like this graph for the demographics, but I'd like it to be narrowed down by region. I'd like to see one for the Glades region to see how many students, white, Hispanic, Black, Asian, Pacific, for each one of the regions, that will tell me better as to who's actually participating. So if you could make that happen for me, I'd appreciate it.
Certainly.
What programs do you have planned for the new middle school and high school that's being built?
Medical and information technology.
For both? The middle school next to Sunset Palms?
The one next to Sunset Palms, information technology, and I believe culinary.
In the high school? The new high school?
Is the medical and IT.
Medical and IT.
Okay.
Well,
Brill?
if I may follow up on that, my concern there is going to be the feeder pattern for those programs. For the Sunset Palms Middle School, culinary, where do they go? Do they go down to West Boca, which is not that close? There's really no schools for those programs for the kids to continue from middle school to be able to continue in those programs. So, hopefully with the new high school that's being built in Lake Worth, that will give us an option. But the only place they can go from there is South Tech.
So when we look at driving forces behind choice and career programs, I think some of this discussion is part of this decision-making process. Everything from local, the economy, labor market statistics that we get from Career Source or Economic Council, Business Development Board, continued feed patterns, stakeholder interest, transportation, funding, even space and capacity are all part of that equation. But a new piece is COVID-19. I can tell you just from what we experienced on March 13th, it was, yes, the lift of moving to distance learning, but that's a very different thing when you're talking about culinary and medical and IT or any of the other in-between career academies. So COVID-19 has put a whole new spin around career and tech ed specifically. But I can, in kind of helping to monitor and lead COVID-19 in some aspect, it is something that we're dealing with on a daily basis. But for our Career Academy teachers, they've upskilled and reskilled over the course of this summer. And I think that's something that the Choice and Career Options team really dug into and did an excellent job of trying to make sure and prepare for August of this year. Dr. Johnson is going to take us into some of what that deep dive looked like.
I'm sorry to keep interrupting. I follow up on Ms. Brill. So, and you covered a little bit, but I think that one of the most important things when we're looking at programming is the feeder pattern. I mean, it doesn't make sense to put in one of the schools, put a new program where the kids have absolutely no place to go when they get out of that school. She made the point at Sunset Palms, there's nowhere the kids are going to go except drive all the way down to West Boca, which is too far away for middle school kids to get to. So, that's got to be one of the guiding factors that you all look at when we put a program in, is where the kid's going to go. It just doesn't make sense to put culinary in Sunset Palms if there's nowhere the kids can go after that. If they want to actually go into the culinary occupation when they get out of high school, there's no place for them to go in high school except to drive miles and miles. What is that, 10 miles away, 12 miles to get to the nearest culinary program. So hopefully you guys will be taking a look at that when you're making these decisions more closely than you are. Mrs. Anders and Dr. Robinson.
And just to follow up with that, when we talk about the dual language program at New Horizons, we need a middle school where they can actually move forward, as well as high school. There is nothing as far as I know. So for New Horizons, Polo Park is something I thought we were looking at one time. I've heard nothing. And Palm Beach Central, and we have a big dual language program at New Horizons, and nothing. And then for the Glades region, for the children that truly want to get into some of the career programs that come to the east, I've been riding the bus a bit with them, and they have to get up at 4:30 in the morning to make that bus for 6:15 or 6 o'clock to kind of take it to the 20-mile bend to get over to a school over here. So, and that's before COVID. And so I've been able to see that per se. So those children don't get a chance to participate because of that. So we need to kind of think about how we can do better. That's the equity piece again.
Dr. Robinson, then Ms. Brew.
Thank you. So I want to look at this whole concept of feeder pattern through the equity lens, right? And so one of the things that, and Dr. Fennoy, I would hope we would have a follow-up workshop on the choice program where we can spend some time and look at the transportation zones, right? So I realize it's nice, it's a wonderful concept to have a school close to home, elementary, middle, high, where you track in terms of the program. That's lovely. But I want to remind you that we have our so-called premier schools where students will come from all over the county to go to these schools, right? And so I don't want us to start thinking that depending on your zip code, you will or will not have access to certain programs through the feeder pattern. I just need to add that other view that in our desire to have these things be nice and smooth, we might inadvertently block some children from participating. And so those transportation zones become critically important in terms of us looking at who has access to what. And I'm gonna hold my heavy hitting comments to later, but this chart, I'm delayed chart on page 10. When you look at this, I think we need to look at if Black parents and students are accessing our choice programs equitably, right? Because it strikes me that with the engineering and technology, that relatively speaking, Black students are not applying. And I think we need to look into the why around that, right? The medical, and let's be honest, many of our programs that are labeled medical are producing young people as home health aides and that level. And so I really need us to focus on high wage, not just high demand, right? Because all too often what's in high demand, what the business community will tell us that they want, are people who will work for low wages. And in my mind, that is not really contributing and to the overall well-being, not only of that person, their family, but also not to the county, right? And so, and I know we had this conversation around the high school and adult programming in Delray, and then that can be a starting point to do that home health aid thing and, the EKG and these other skills that's not going to help you feed your, not going to let you feed your family with just that. We could have the pathway, but I just want to be clear that this data, medical, listen, medical is not all medical. And that what, I'm an MD. When I talk to my colleagues and we have a medical program, I'm like, yo, hold on. All right? That's entry level. That's the nice way I put it. But I want us to understand and hopefully agree that what we want is for our graduates to be able to feed their families. And a lot of this, what we call medical, and which is almost painful to me to see so many Black and Latinx as well as white students in these programs, and I know that we are not creating the pathway to have the education they need to be able to feed their family. So this ain't worth bragging about, is what I'm trying to say, in my humble opinion, and I'll hold the rest till later.
Ms. Brill?
Thank you. So 2 comments. One was to go back to Dr. Robinson's comment about the feeder pattern in certain schools. Mr. Barbieri and I well know that a lot of families don't have the ability to send their children to Bach or to Dreyfus because of how far away it is. Some will let their children travel, some will not, and that's why we fought so hard, unfortunately not successfully, for a South Area School of the Arts or something like that, because not everybody can. So feeder patterns are still very important. And the other thing I wanted to bring up, I know Mrs. Andrew mentioned the dual language programs. We had a wonderful workshop talking about how we were expanding the dual language programs. I would love to get an update on where we are with that. I feel like sometimes we talk about stuff. Did it really happen? You know, is there Italian down in I think it was one of the Boca schools, right, Mr. Barbieri, that you had asked for Italian? We were looking at Portuguese, we were looking at Chinese, we were, looking, of course, at Spanish. Where did all that go? Because we sat here and had a workshop about that, and I feel like sometimes we just talk, and I'd like to get an update on it.
Dr. Robinson?
Thank you. So I'm sure that there's some families that will deny their children access to a program because it's not close to home. It is my impression that that is not the majority. If you, come visit my house and watch all the buses rolling out of Bach, right? Just come watch them roll out, okay? And many of them are going to Tri-Rail. So people will choose the programs that they think are outstanding. I like the feeder patterns. I'm just saying to you that, and that's why last year I talked a lot about regionalization, right? But let me just add this, because I guess, maybe I'm just, all my triggers are triggering. Let me just say this. So let me tell you my history and the history of what is now known as Bach, right? Before then, it was the School of the Arts, right? There was a point when it was grades 7 through 12. It just so happened that I moved into the neighborhood when it was empty, right? It had been North Shore High School. I'm not even going to talk about the comparisons between North Shore and Westward and those communities and who got what, but it was North Shore High School. The school district closed North Shore. I'm not even going to add all my bullet points under that, right? But this is what I know for certain that I witnessed with my eyes, right? That facility was like a bus storage place for a year. And then guess what? It was Wellington High School. Now we know where Bach is, right? It's in West Palm Beach. When Wellington High School was supposed to open, it wasn't ready in August. That facility, Wellington High School painted across it, right? And I'm telling you, there were busloads and busloads of children rolling in from Wellington, okay? Rolling in from Wellington into my backyard, because they were all with their neighbors and friends, we all nice, comfortable and stuff, okay? So the whole thing about, and I heard it many times in debates around various schools, most notably Suncoast, where people would say, well, it's not that we don't want our children to go to school with other children, we just don't want them to have to ride the bus that far. Yeah, well, okay, it was a whole bunch of people sent their children on the bus from Wellington that I saw with my eyes. That's the most egregious example. And so while I like the feeder patterns, and that's a lovely concept, if we're gonna talk that equity and access talk, right, we need to look at the transportation zones, because I believe, just like these folks put their children on Tri-Rail and the bus to come to my backyard to Bach, right? God bless them. I'm glad Bach is there for you, and I hope your children enjoy the program, right? Other parents and children will take advantage of transportation if need be, if it's not close by. Our goal, I think, is to make sure that we have outstanding programs that meet the needs of the children, inspire them to become active participants in their own education, prepare them so that they can feed their families or go any path they choose, and I'm gonna roll into that in a minute. But I just want to be clear. We cannot, on the one hand, say equity and access, and then on the other hand, not talk about the transportation zones. Okay, listen, I'm sorry, y'all triggering me.
Assistant Superintendent Bogus, you want to continue, please?
Yes, sir. We were picking up right where we rolled into our deep dive into career and technical education over this summer. And in doing so, Dr. Johnson, we are picking up with program highlights.
Okay. So some of the program highlights over the summer include we built and dedicated another home thanks to the Construction Academy at Seminole Ridge High School. We also had one of our graduates from the BASA program down at Boynton Beach to be featured in a newsletter from Embry-Riddle University for obtaining her PhD in human factors. At the beginning of COVID, we were happy that our medical academies could assist the community by donating PPE. And also, one of our signature events that we normally have at the end of the school year to recognize our students who have opted to go into the military had to be converted to virtual. So we ended up having a really cool opportunity to do this on a national scale. One of our staff members, Ms. Coble, sat on a national planning team that included lots of celebrities to celebrate our students who opted to go into the military.
One pause. To lead, you must first serve. And I think that's what we showed when the COVID impact came. We had a chairman of this board and a superintendent that went out in the community taking gloves, masks, gowns, anything that we could get from our medical academies and redistributing it out for the COVID impact. So I think that was a highlight and mention, not only as a program highlight, but I think as a district leadership highlight as well.
Vice Chairman Shaw.
Thank you. I haven't heard you talk any about this issue. Where are we and what experiences have we had recently on our students and our CTE and our choice programs getting internships and being involved out in the community? I think for us, we see the agreements, and most of them are health related, but not a lot of others. Where are we, and what experiences are we having, if any, that are obstacles to us being able to get these internships?
It is a challenge right now. Currently, medically speaking, we're still on a pause from the State Department on whether or not we can have the clinicals aspect. And our clinical relationships, we have agreements, but there's a bottleneck with everyone, and I'm talking secondary and post-secondary, trying to get into any facility that would allow them, given social distancing and all the other aspects. When it comes to internships, there are many businesses that had wide open doors prior to COVID, and they are not right now. We're furthering engagement with Business Development Board and an upcoming Claim Your Future showcase as part of a virtual platform in those aspects. But there's pieces around internships that right now we don't have the open doors that we used to.
Okay. Just a quick follow-up, and this is related to staff. The same question, having any luck in getting teachers involved with either summer internships or any kinds of internships of training within various aspects of the business community?
So are you talking teachers themselves
Teachers.
going out doing externships?
Yes.
So we do have, especially with our STEM teachers, engineering teachers, they're working with the STEM councils, and they have been going out doing externships where they're able to learn the updated information and bring that back into the classroom. Of course, with COVID this year, we did not see that happening. But I want to tag on to something else, to the original question about internships. So prior to COVID, we do have students that have been going out doing internships with our international business and our finance academies. We have our students who are in our criminal justice academies. They go out and they do internships at various attorney offices, state attorneys' offices. So we do have students outside of our typical medical academies that do go out. Sometimes it is a challenge with students due to age, with some internships at some facilities, and some businesses have issues with insurance, but we do have some students going out outside of the typical medical kids.
And Mr. Shaw, and for the rest of the board, prior to COVID, we did, I think, almost the entire executive team did go out and tour many businesses in Palm Beach County, Pratt Whitney, Scripps. And at the Scripps visit and at Florida Power and Light, there were some, I actually did a presentation, Mr. Shaw, where one of our teachers was part of a patent that they part of a team that developed a patent, and we went out there and celebrated them. So I think the community at large, the business community, has a really strong interest in it. I think once we get through COVID, those doors, I think Kelly Smallridge and the Business Development Board actually has a very specific platform around this work. And again, when we toured Pratt Whitney, I think Dr. Sheffield and I went out there. They were all in around, investing money in the district and creating an engineering academy at the time. So again, I think those doors will open back up. I don't think we close any of those doors. I think it's just COVID just postponed it all.
I know we've interrupted a lot, so why don't we let you get through your other 16 slides, and we'll try and hold the questions as much as possible.
But before they get started, I just think, because I'm sitting here and I'm hearing all in regards to what we need to bring back to the board, and we definitely will get it to you, is that we talk a lot in regards to what the immediate needs are of our students, which is very important. But in this current space is also the immediate needs of the adult learners, the teachers. We have spent a great amount of time in regarding to walking alongside and providing that ongoing support and training for teachers, because when you talk about the CTE, the courses, and many of the other pieces that come along with it, our teachers are in dire need of that immediate coaching and guidance. So as we are navigating with our students, we are right there with our teachers. So some of the ask, I'll say again, it's just not the inedible at this time, as our priorities just have changed in regarding to trying to set both the adult learners and the student learners up for immediate success in this space.
So one of the other areas of success that we take a look at, each year the state provides us with the graduation rates for our CTE students. These are students who concentrate in a CTE program, which means they take at least 3 courses in a single CTE program. So you can see from a graduation rate standpoint, and this data is from the state, that our students do outperform even the state targets that are set. Our target for this year is a 95.75%. And so looking at what our actual graduation rates have been over the past couple years, we hope to meet that or exceed it. We're continue to be guided by programs of study that lead to articulated credit, which will save students both time and money if they're able to obtain those articulated credits at the local state college. And we continue to be leaders in industry certification. And I know Jay want to speak.
I only want to make the point that this was in the midst of COVID, where the bulk of our industry certification testing takes place. Anywhere between February through April, May is when the bulk of IC testing takes place on our middle school and high school campuses. And in looking at it, we still produced over 10,247 passes and still put out 13,000 even taking the test. We flipped to a virtual platform. We were moving and doing distance testing. It was one incredible feat for our schools and our students. We really wanted to make mention of that because it really impacted the way we did the work, but the result still came out incredible for our students.
So really quickly, back in March, we did the mid-year instructional review, and we talked to you guys about some work that we had to do over the summer and during the spring. And with COVID hitting, it became very interesting for our small CTE team. But some of that work was around an executive order and also House Bill 7071 from the governor's office, where he is looking to make the state of Florida #1 in workforce and career and technical education in the United States by 2030. It also involved an audit. We also had work around new legislation around Perkins, which is our legislation for career and technical education from a federal level. So when it came to the governor's CTE audit, the state took a deep dive in terms of CTE in every school district. And they took a look at things such as enrollment numbers, numbers of industry certifications, and whether the programs were aligned with labor market demand. If we didn't hit the mark on one of those areas, they required the districts to take a deeper dive and to complete kind of a survey, if you will, on where we were with the particular programs. So the programs that you see on the screen here were some of the programs that we had to take that deeper dive and take a look at from a labor market demand standpoint, from an enrollment standpoint, whether or not it was a newer program, so the numbers just weren't there yet, or if it's a program that the state has daggered for eventual deletion within the next couple of years. And we also took a look at our industry certification, including the passage rate. The next item that we had to deal with was, again, new legislation around Perkins 5 that required us to do a deep dive, doing some stakeholder engagement, working alongside with Palm Beach State College with a survey out to the community. We also had to take a deep dive into our programs at every single high school and middle school, looking at size, scope, and quality, whether this program allowed for students to concentrate, again, take at least 3 courses, looking at how we transition our students who are in a CTE program in middle school, how they can transition into the high school program. Also taking a look at those work-based learning experiences that you guys talked about earlier, the internships. But the way Perkins 5 defines work-based learning, it's internships, it's OJT, it's participating in student organizations such as FBLA and HOSA. It's also, they included whether the students are participating in a capstone experience. And then also taking a look at whether the programs were aligned with labor market, either from a local standpoint and or a state standpoint. Perkins 5 legislation also had us take a look at how we're recruiting and retaining our CTE teachers, and also looking at the diversity of our teachers. Are we hiring teachers that look like our student population? And also taking a look at equity and access from a variety of different lenses, and putting something in place to continuously monitor the enrollment and performance of our CTE students. What we walked away with is 4 buckets of work: continued funding for programs and activities utilizing our Perkins funding, also continued collaboration with our post-secondary partners in our business and industry, continued professional development for our teachers, and also student performance and program improvements. Again, continuing to take a look at the data. We also had the pleasure of undergoing a monitoring review, a nice little name for an audit. And that audit took place September the 14th through the 18th. That's a significant date because it was the week before our brick and mortar return of our students to brick and mortar. And instead of the state coming in person this time, they did it virtually, and everything had to be evidence-based. So it was very interesting. They monitored us on 3 years, and they monitored everything from documentation of equipment that had been purchased using Perkins funding, where we literally had to have schools take pictures of these items that they selected and submit those to the state. We are awaiting a final report. We do expect to have at least one finding with no corrective action because it is a finding on a data element that was included under Perkins 4, which was in the FY19 school year. One student was reported erroneously with an occupational completion point, but since then, the state doesn't even require that data element anymore, so no corrective action is needed there. So we're awaiting the final report on that.
Two pieces of legislation that really are impactful for the vision and growth of college and career acceleration centers around SB 434 and SB 662 going into effect. The designation of school grades, I can say we worked very hard to have career dual enrollment added as part of acceleration. I think as we continue to cast vision with our newly established relationship with Palm Beach State College, career dual enrollment becomes a really incredible opportunity for us at both our comprehensive and even technical centers. The other is around education in the military, the usage of the ASVAB score as part of acceleration. So those are two pieces to come when we look at college and career acceleration. The next slide is around choice and career grant initiatives. There are quite a few here, and I'll go as quickly as possible, but I want to make sure that they get strong mention. That we have a Perkins Rural Innovation Grant that we've just wrote that is really going to provide the Glade Central High School engineering program opportunity for expansion. The Carrier Corporation put up their national, if not international, headquarters right here in Palm Beach County. And the superintendent and Dr. Sheffield and others really solidified this partnership and working with Carrier for our HVAC program at Royal Palm Beach. CARES Act. This is what Dr. Sheffield talked about when we made the flip to distance learning for CTE. It was identified as a strong area of weakness that we didn't have enough CTE souped up laptops for all of our career programs. So we invested $411,000 and really got that grant to make sure that every CTE student has that opportunity, both in person or distance. Computer science teacher bonuses. We've also got computer science certification grant. The next one is at NAF in the infusion around Forest Hill High School, and that's from United Technologies. So not only Carrier, but United Technologies investing back in our K-12 system. Santa Lucia's, I think this came to the board a meeting or two ago, that we have a $750,000 grant coming from DeLuca Foundation and in partnership with our Education Foundation. Again, cybersecurity is one of the leading industries identified not only here in Palm Beach County, but nationally, and really equipping the next generation to be ready for that. And last piece, Healthcare Innovation Grant, again with our partners at the Education Foundation, and really providing the support from Quantum and really honing in on those medical skill sets.
And I would be remiss if I didn't say accolades to my team because most of these grants, probably all of them, someone on our team wrote them, and we were some busy beavers over the summer in terms of grant writing. We do continue to provide ongoing support to the schools. We talked about professional development earlier, and especially around working with our teachers so that they can offer students the opportunity to earn an industry certification from home while still following the state test security guidelines. We transitioned a lot of our textbooks to online textbooks as we went through the textbook adoption process, providing needed equipment, supplies, and so forth. And as Jay and Dr. Sheffield have already mentioned, flipping some of our very signature events and processes from in-person to virtual. And again, kudos to our team for building a virtual showcase platform that not only showcased our choice and career programs, but also gives every single school in this district an opportunity to be showcased. We continue to succeed with our IB programs. This summer, Jay and I were on a conference call, and it was brought to our attention, and I guess I didn't really realize this, that with the addition of some of our new IB programs that have come on board over the past couple of years, Palm Beach County is #1 in the state of Florida in terms of the number of authorized IB programs and enrollment, and #4 in the nation. So that is very exciting to hear. We continue to have strong arts programs, STEM programs, STEAM programs. Our Montessori programs continue to thrive, and we mentioned earlier about dual language and looking where those can be expanded. And so our team will work with our multicultural department in terms of looking at how we can continue to expand in the dual language area. Cambridge, we now have 3 middle schools that have Cambridge. We talked about Verdi earlier. And again, our JROTC programs, as I proudly wear my ROTC mask here from the Army, continue to do and provide an opportunity for our students to be able to have a successful future.
In closing, our priorities moving forward. We take what we learned from our federal Perkins 5 review, our deep dive on comprehensive local needs assessment, and really use that as applicability for our secondary CTE. But not just secondary CTE, it's an expansion of CTE across the board, from secondary to post-secondary. What that means for our adult learners in this community, our community stakeholders for workforce training, and anything in between. Program reviews, and even looking at the allocations to each of those choice programs or choice schools, and how the budget flows. Strategic alignment to post-secondary opportunities, as I just stated, and really looking at expansion pieces of becoming with this new MOU with Palm Beach State College and what that could really hold. And lastly, policy updates, specific to K-8 and what that would mean as far as a policy piece, and working with our legal counsel to bring that back to this board.
Questions, board members? Mrs. Andrews?
I have to truly commend Mr. Vargas and the team out there for the work that you do in the West area, the West Glades region. Working with the Glades Career Readiness Roundtable, being on all of those Google Meets calls and working with them. And I wanted to highlight Pahokee High School, largest increase in Florida for IB diplomas earned at a school in 2020. That's a big deal.
Fantastic.
That is a big deal. And our mechatronics program that we have at West Tech and the grants that you have secured for West Tech, I just know I spent a lot of time with you all, and I really, really appreciate the community appreciates you because you're on the ground, out there before the pandemic. You were out there in the community, and now that we're on virtual, you're meeting with the roundtable and doing great things at West Tech as well as the school. So I know you very well, and you put your money where your mouth is. You're right there making it happen for our children and our community. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Team effort.
And Mrs. Andrews, if I could say this, in terms of the success you see in the IB programs, again, I would be remiss if I didn't say this. Sandra Wesson, who has been our choice manager for the last 14 years, last Friday was her last day. She retired. She really has worked very closely with Pahokee, and she was thrilled to see this success. So,
Mrs. Whitfield?
Thank you. I just, first of all, I want to say thank you guys so much for all your work. You do wonderful work. One of the questions that Dr. Robinson had posed was to see the budget for each of the choice programs. And just going through those, there's such huge disparity between schools. And I feel like we've given a leg up to certain schools by just funding them disproportionately from other schools, and it can be seen really in the budget. And so it's causing me some anxiety to look at it, just knowing that I'm putting my daughter in one of those schools, and it doesn't get as much funding as other schools do. So I want to know how we make those allocations, who makes those decisions, and is there a place for us in the future to sort of even out the playing field for some of these schools that have, wonderful choice programs, but may not be funded at the same level as other schools from us, not necessarily from grants. I know we have some that are, or foundations, they're offset by that, but our funding levels, where we send the money.
right, and you're right. Our choice budget is well overdue for some deeper dives and an overhaul. And that is one of the things as a priority for our department is to take a look at that. The budget has been the same for probably the last 10 years. And as we move forward, we do realize that there are certain areas that need to be revamped. Again, taking a look at shifting, that means changes have to be made, and some of those changes may not necessarily be popular because with, of course, budget times as they are right now, to make that shift to give to one may mean you have to take a little bit from some others. So that's some deep work that we have to do to make sure that we are as close to equitable as we possibly can from a budgetary standpoint. But we do realize that that is definitely an area of work that needs to be done.
Mr. Superintendent?
Yes, Ms. Whitfield and to the rest of the board, one of the things that the team has taught me over the last couple of months that needs to be a part of this, sort of reporting out about the perceived inequities in funding, is that I've come to learn that a lot of our programs were started at the school. There wasn't a district approval. And over time, as those programs either became successful, then the question became who starts to fund them after the school initiates them. And so that's part of that. So that needs to be clearly laid out for the board, because some of these programs weren't approved by the board. They were school level programs and then I think part of this is also the reality of some of these programs were started and continued by very, very competent teachers. And when that teacher left, then the programs tend to falter. And so I think there's a lot of stuff inside of that we have to really unpack. Because one of the things Mr. Burke and I talk about often is, if a school decides to do something on its own with the help of a foundation or a grant, is it really the board's responsibility to continue in perpetuity? Because if that's the case, then we have some other things to talk about. So that's just part of the conversation with the board, is to really spell out what started as an individual program at a school and what started as a program sponsored by the board.
And Dr. Fano, I do think in regards to a follow-up to Dr. Robinson's question, and I know we did submit some responses to her questions on last evening, and there is some additional follow-up to it. And particularly, I think one of the questions was around in regards to those programs that are self-sufficient, meaning funding themselves and so forth. So we do have a deeper dive that we need to go as we're looking into the budget. We have the takeaway. We will do a synopsis like we did on last evening. It's just going to take us a few weeks to pull together all these data points, and we will definitely get it back to you. But I did hear loud and clear in regards to the feeder padding, and I'm looking to the side of me at Mike here, because we know when we start talking in regards to the feeder padding, and to your point, as you're bringing up the budget, is that we do have to hit a hard stop and to do an evaluation, a self-evaluation in-house in regards to the budgetary pieces, because with any program, it indeed takes funding. So as we start that process, I'm sure we will definitely need to come back to the board, because it will be some hard conversation and some unpopular conversations in regards to what we continue and what we pull back.
I think the other part of this, I think for the board, is the very hard conversation on if we're willing to reboundary all these places. Now, that's sort of the elephant in the room. It sounds like to me from the team educating me, some decisions were made to avoid the boundary process. And so that's just, that's how I see it. Now, I could be dead wrong, but it does appear that way. And so that's just another conversation for us and the board to have is, are we willing to go through, especially when we start talking about the K-8, how many boundary processes is this board willing to go through in a year?
Dr. Robinson and Mrs. Andrews.
Thank you. Okay, so let's start with the choice budget that Ms. Whitfield referred to. What the document you saw does not show you is all the programs with the same name, with reportedly the same curriculum and reportedly the same expertise of the staff that would have a big fat zero, right? And so it is something that we need to talk about. I think before we talk about that, though, we need to define as a board what we think the choice programs are supposed to do, right? And so I'm fairly clear. I'm open for conversation, but one of the questions that I asked was if you can give me the data, and I think I asked for PYG, by disaggregated by school, by program. Because the question is, are these programs short-term having children actively engage in their own education, right? So if the PYG is not increasing And especially if it's falling, then it's not doing that, right? And so, and then we could get to the industry certification, like at the end of the road. I think that's great, that's fine. But somehow we have to, again, in addition, with the North Star piece, define what success is within the choice programs. I would add, though, just since I mentioned the North Star, that maybe industry certification is considered as a bullet point in the North Star. But, so I just had to say that about the budget. So I look forward to seeing that spreadsheet that is like, and I suggested this, I cannot tell you, I guess y'all know I'm really frustrated, right? I'm just frustrated. What was you said? I'm testy, Dr. Fenoy, I'm testy. Okay, so, because this is not a new conversation, right? There's some new people at the table, but this is not a new conversation. And it all ties to, okay, so let's talk about K-8. So let's deal with that, right? So I think that most parents that want their child to go to a K-8 expect their child to go from first grade to second grade, from fourth grade to fifth grade. But how about this? From fifth grade to sixth grade at the same school. That is not how our K-8s are set up. And Mr. Boggess slid it in there, but I want to be really, really clear. I think it's a bait and switch. I'm completely and utterly disgusted by it, right? And so what we have is a K-5, and then you can apply to go to the middle school that's associated with your elementary school. And I think that is so very wrong. And so part of my history, as I kind of alluded to, is the whole thing with Bach. I won't go all into it, but, just like I thought years ago that if you successfully completed UB Kinsey, that you would get to go to Bach, and that if you successfully completed Bach, you would get to go to Dreyfus. Well, that didn't happen. So now we are in the very early stages of this whole K-8 thing, and I don't want to see that same bait and switch happen again. Now, specifically now, this came up around Plumosa because the middle school's going to open soon, right? Now, fortunately, Wanda Paul and her crew made sure that the middle school had enough choice seats, not enough choice seats, enough seats enough total seats for sixth grade to house each and every fifth grader and more. So it would get to that, close to that 50-50 in-house and choice balance that I think is perfect, right? And so why we would set this up to say that the fifth graders at Plumosa need to apply? What? Excuse me? That's a bait and switch. I'm gonna be quiet right now. I would like to hear how my fellow board members feel about that before I go through the rest of my choice comments. But for me, that is unconscionable. It's just wrong.
Mrs. Andrews?
Well, it was in reference to something else, and the first thing I want to ask, and I know you brought it out early, the agri-technology choice, is that the agricultural teacher that's out there at Glade Central? You all have upgraded that?
To an academy, yes.
That is big deal. She has been honored by the state of Florida, so if everybody did not know that, Glade Central had a wonderful agricultural program. So you have just, right before the pandemic, I met with her, and then we lost track of each other, so commend you for that. And then my last piece, I'm still worried about the children. I heard when I was over at West Tech the other day, I don't know if it's true, that maybe in January we might have welding for students. Is that something that's on the horizon, Mr. Boggess? I heard that.
I can't say that it is definite for January, but it's definitely a conversation piece that we've been working towards. January's tomorrow in my head, and that'll be an incredible feat to pull off, but I can't say that.
Yeah, because I just want to say this, because I really do appreciate the work that you do. But until we get something at our technical schools, Ms. McQuinn and Dr. Robinson, you know what I'm talking about, back in the day when we had North Tech and West Tech for children. Now, we've done a little better with the mechatronics and the construction academy at West Tech, so we do have some children there. And all of that equipment that we have sitting there all day long, where we have children that's not included in this packet at all, that graduate from our schools with nowhere to go. They end up getting a job in fast food, or they may not have a job at all, or getting into trouble. We've got to find a way to get these young people, male and female, in these programs. We've actually upgraded our facilities, and they're working in the evening with lots of people getting trained, HVAC, welding, construction, the whole works. And the adults are getting it. But during the day, for these high school children that really need to get something, because they're not included in your data, they're walking across the stage, getting a diploma, and they have nowhere to go. Many of them don't get a chance to go to college. Some of them do, and if they do and they got that trade, they can work and make money. But a lot of them walk across the stage and they have no place to go. And right now that we're in the pandemic, they don't even walk across the stage. I'm worried about a lot of children right now maybe sitting in their homes because they have not gotten the skill level training to get a job that can be applicable for them to make a good living, or even to pay for them to go to college. So we've got that. I talked to Fred Boucher a little bit before, when we have at Park Vista, the automotive, that sit there at night and nobody's using it, or during the day that nobody's using it at night. We've got a lot of facilities that I just know a lot of kids, because I'm in the schools, that have no place to go, and they're doing the academic piece and they're graduating, and once they walk across the stage or get a diploma, there's nothing. We've got to do something about that. That's why when I heard that we might have welding during the day at West Tech, I just heard it last week, I had my fingers crossed, because I'm walking there looking at HVAC and all of those facilities sitting there during the day, and nothing's happening for children. So we have to do something about that. We really do. And it's urgent.
I think hopefully we're done with the comments at this point. Well, Dr. Robinson, we have another workshop to go through, and the meeting's already gone on 5 hours, so let's try and wrap it up so we can get to the next one. Go ahead, Dr. Robinson.
Well, Ms. Whitfield had her hand up, so it's not just me.
I didn't see Mrs. Whitfield's hand. Mrs. Whitfield, go ahead.
Thank you. I'll try to be quick. I thought one of the things that just came up that was very important to me was, what is the purpose of choice? And I think that's really important for us to define. For me, the purpose of choice, and I'll give you my example of my daughter, most people that are me, white and middle class in this county, seem to want to send their kids to Bach for middle school. But my kid didn't want to do art, and it wasn't her passion. And so I thought, I don't want to send her to a school just because that's where everybody sends their kids. So she goes to what is closer to our local school, though not actually our local school. And when she got there, the experience she's having is literally fabulous. She's having a great middle school opportunity. Her teachers are brilliant. The programs are amazing. I really can't say enough about Coniston. I'm so proud of them. But what I think is the struggle is getting people to go to their home schools, and the draw that gets people into a different school other than the one that all their friends are talking about is feeling like they're going to get a great education when they get there. So having these programs and funding them fully, so that when they get there, the opportunities can be just as great at that school as it is at a school that may have a foundation behind it, I think is our challenge as a board. And so what I would like to see is that a choice program is truly for that learner who's interested in that subject to go to that school, because they see something really interesting there. And I know there's so many other societal pressures that come on to people in this community in deciding what school you go to. But I think our job as a school district is, no matter which school you choose to go into, you have a great education when you get there. And so I think we as a district need to look, if our schools are not living up to that level when a student does choose to go to that school, or if that is their home school, then we have to step in and we have to make those changes to either fund it or fix it or get rid of it. If that choice program is not as good as it should be, because I don't want anyone to show up to a school that they put all their hopes and dreams in their child into, and then when they get there, they don't feel like it's as good as they want it to be. Does that make sense? So those are my comments. Thank you.
Go ahead, Dr. Robinson.
Thank you. So, well, thank you for saying that, Mrs. Whitfield. I think one of my questions kind of alluded to a similar thought process. In addition to requesting the data about academic acceleration as a result of engagement in your program, I also asked what analysis are we doing of the choice program that tells us how we need to improve the schools that people are not choosing, right? Because that was a conversation that held on this dais 15 years ago, instead of just creating the choice programs that we thought it would like drive this competition, which is in part what I think happened with these schools creating their own choice programs. But if they were called choice, Dr. Fenoy, they were known about by the district. They might not have gone through the whole formal process. The answer I normally get is that many of the choice programs started with the MSAP grants, and then when those grants expired, then we continued to fund them at a similar level through the operating dollars. And then there came a point in time when we kind of went, no, we can't do that anymore. So if you want to have a specialty program at your school, you just need to figure it out, which is why Roosevelt Elementary has the same name program as Poinciana, like, you know, this is my favorite one, right, to point out. And Poinciana has funding and a planetarium, and Roosevelt has what, zilch, right? And so, yes, we need to have some hard conversations about what we mean. I mean, I'm really thrilled that we're having these conversations around equity and choice. It's also very frustrating to me, and I guess just because I've been involved in these conversations for so long, I want to shift into fifth gear right away. And we're not ready for that. So I'm in first gear, but I'm doing that thing, the thing when the car needs to shift gears, whatever that thing is called. That's what I feel like I'm doing. Yeah, but so let me just say this, and I will only address two things, and I will address them briefly. First, because I think I kind of made it my expectations clear in a previous board workshop about Roosevelt Leadership Academy. Right, so it is my hope and my expectation that we will end up with Roosevelt Leadership Academy for young men, Roosevelt Leadership Academy for young women, and Roosevelt Leadership Academy for anybody who wants to come, right? And if we need to bring in some of the people who envision that program in the first place, you know, aside from me, but the community people, then we could do that. But I'm just telling you where I hope we go, right? And so whatever those obstacles to getting there are, you know, you can share that with us. I mean, there are people out there that say they want to help support good work, right? And so I'm ready to say to folks, here's the plan, write a check, right? So now, but the other thing, I need to get back to Plumosa because it's time sensitive. And so, again, I mean, I made my case. I think it's a bait and switch to call it and Plumosa is not the only one. Plumosa is the one in this stage right now, right, where we can get it right and create the template and then maybe apply it to other schools. But Plumosa will have the space in the middle school for what I think is ideal. All the kids who've been going to the school in elementary can go in middle school, and some more kids can come in. So I don't understand why we are going through this you gotta apply thing. So here's my best idea at the moment. I will trust that if you find it, Dr. Fenoy, to not be a good idea, you'll come up with something better. But it's like, what's that thing called with college, early acceptance? That's what it's called, right?
Early admissions.
Early admissions.
Early admission, okay. So my proposal is, I'm not trying to create middle school boundaries for Plumosa Middle School. I'm saying that we could do an early admissions and say, I don't know what the right date would be, before or after the choice fair, and say, if you're in fifth grade, you commit to staying at the middle school and you've got a seat. You are ours, you've been here, we told you it was a K-8, you can stay, right? And then we can count out how many of those kids are gonna stay, and then you know how many seats you have for choice, right? as part of that commitment, they would say, I'm not applying to other choice programs. If they do, then they lost that seat, and then they would end up in the lottery with everybody else. If, for example, maybe they decided, I want to go for Bach, I'm going to list Bach number 1, promotion number 2. That's fine, but you're in the lottery process, you know, per our guidelines for your number 2 choice. My point is, it is wrong. It is wrong for us to call it a K-8 if it's not operating like a K-8 from the parent and student point of view. And so that's my best idea. I just trust that if the board doesn't want to talk about it, that superintendent will fix it. Thank you.
Ms. Brill, I know you want to speak. Let me just ask a quick question on Verdi and Addison Meisner. It's my understanding that there is a lottery, but the 5th graders have first priority. So kids will only be able to get into Verdi and Addison Meisner if the 5th graders, there's not enough 5th graders that want to move on to 6th. Isn't that the way it's working?
So right now, the K-8 schools all operate the same way. So if I am looking to stay there for 6th grade, I apply for 6th grade. One of the things that we are getting ready to do is a policy update that would include either some priority sacks and things of that nature. We had planned on doing that in the spring, and of course, things got delayed because of COVID. But we are gearing up now for a policy update where we will be addressing all of the issues around K-8 and bringing forth a couple of different options in addition to the one that Dr. Robinson just mentioned.
Well, Dr. Robinson's right from the standpoint that if we get a commitment early on from the 5th grade parents that they want to stay there, then we know how many 6th grade seats are actually open to outsiders, so that we can tell them there's only 30 seats available at Verde Elementary, for example, instead of saying there's 80 seats available when we know 50 of those kids are already coming from 5th grade. So maybe we should look at something like that, because my understanding was any 5th grader that wanted to stay at Addison or Verde would be able to stay, and then only other kids would come in. But her idea to get an early admission, then we know exactly how many extra seats we're going to have available. And maybe we'll have none, depending on how many 5th graders decide to stay at that school.
Yeah, Mr. Barbieri and Dr. Robinson, let us look at this and bring some options to the board, because I think one of the things that I'm curious about is, do we want to undo past practices moving forward, or do we want to just make this do we want to do it for schools, the new schools moving forward? I think so we need to figure out the different options available, because I don't want to deny any families that, again, like you said, who want to go. But I think there's also, I'm curious if part of the design of the K-8 model was to attract other kids into certain schools too. So I need to get more clarity on that, but it sounds like we need to bring you more options, because I need to know if we really want to undo the way we've done it moving forward. And so I think we need some time to really dig into this, and I'll talk to you guys one-on-one.
Ms. Brill, then Mrs. Whitfield.
Thank you. And so Dr. Robinson's comments I found were disturbing, because I wasn't familiar with that process. And like Dr. Robinson, I would have thought that a student who's at the school and it becomes K-8 automatically has entree into the K-8 program. It makes no sense to me. So as far as undoing what we've done in the past, Dr. Fenoy, if it's not working anymore, then you got to undo it, right? So if it's not serving our purpose. So I look forward to you coming back with that. I do know that not all K-8s work the same way in the same schools. I know I have one in my district that they're having trouble filling as a K-8. That they did it as a K-8 to hopefully grow the population, and you know what? It's not happening. So, not every area is really ripe for a K-8. It works in some parts. That's why I really oppose the thought for Sunset Palms being a K-8, because I know how the communities are there. But I agree with Dr. Robinson. I think we need to get that fixed for this coming year and definitely give priority to those children who are staying there, especially since there's enough seats.
Mrs. Whitfield?
I'm sorry, I know we want to end this, but this is burning question for the superintendent going forward as you come back for us. So if one of the things that I understand is the difference between schools. So if you compare a Suncoast to Lake Worth High, which those are the two that are in my head, Suncoast has more offerings for AP than Lake Worth High would, right? Because they have more students that create that can take advantage of those opportunities so we can pay for a teacher. What I'm curious is now that we've gone into this virtual world, would it be possible going forward for a student to be able to take a seat in one of those classes that Suncoast is offering for a class that is not offered at their school? So if they want to take AP Physics, we'll pretend there's no class there, that they could actually take it at a different school so that they could participate and have those opportunities in case they weren't able to have it at their home school or at their choice program, so that they could have every opportunity that this district offers to them. So if you can come back and tell us
Yeah,
what
we'll
you
come
think.
back. I don't know the answer to that today because, again, FTE follows kids. You know, and, you know, principals are going to be very sensitive about money leaving their building for another. But let me say this. I think one thing we have learned from this distance learning model, and we talk about it amongst ourselves all the time, is how do we get our best teachers in front of the kids that need them the most? And I think there's got to be an opportunity with this distance learning model to figure that out. Now, again, distance learning isn't for everybody. We all know that as a board. We get the emails. Some kids can thrive in that environment. I'm actually surprised how many kids are thriving in that environment. But on the flip side of that, we know some kids, even in honors class. I think I was on a Council of Great City Schools call the other day. It was Dr. Sonia St. Delisa's in Baltimore. She made a comment that most of her honors kids in the virtual world are now regular kids. They've lost whatever supports they had in the building. They've now lost that in the virtual world. And so I think there's something for us to discuss there. But it's been on our radar, and we just have to figure out how it all blends in together. Because I think that to me, that's the game changer. Is we know that there are some teachers out there, and let me back up. Even when we go back to choice, you know, part of the tension with choice is, again, I was a principal at a career and technical education high school. The biggest problem you have is teachers. And what I mean by that, do you have enough engineering teachers to have 100 programs in Palm Beach County? Like literally, you know, those career and technical education teachers are hard to come by. They just flat out are. And so you would think in the culinary world that we could find all kind of professors and teachers to teach culinary. It is not that easy. I was at, I think, West Boca, one of them the other day. When those teachers leave, it takes a Herculean effort to find a replacement of that quality. And so, again, some of that is driven by the market. So I think there's a bigger conversation we need to have around, you know, again, I think back to the zone question, you know, or even the expansion of North Tech, which is something that is high on my priority list to get that building done. Could these be hubs so that we don't have to keep replicating programs 100 different ways in the buildings, and then figure out maybe this is the central location where the transportation could be fixed because we're going to one place? I think those are the type of conversations we need to have with West Tech, North Tech, South Tech. I think when you think about the Broward models and the Orange County models, they don't have all these programs in the schools, ladies and gentlemen. They have them in these centers. And I think that's part of our discussion moving forward. So we'll bring that stuff back to you. Thank you.
Any other comments? Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Appreciate it.
All right, Dr. Sheffield, don't go anywhere. If you could